set, go. Okay. Hi, and welcome to the Church of Generations. I hope you all feel welcome. Everybody is welcome here at the Church of Generations. If this is your first time, I want to formally welcome you. If you see a member, or if you're looking around and you see somebody that you haven't met before, you don't recognize, take this time to introduce yourself so that everybody feels welcome here. If you've met them, invite them to lunch. Everybody loves a free lunch. Everybody loves free food. But I'm going to transition today and let you know that we're going to be talking today over 2 Samuel 5. But before that, I would just want to recap over what we discussed last week. Last week, Sherilyn was our speaker. I was out of town for the week, so I just want to thank you for being our speaker last week. I want to just recap on what she had talked about. She had gone over the chapter before, chapter 4, and she we had talked, and so I know what you guys discussed last week. But so prior to 1 Samuel, or during 1 Samuel, there were judges who were rulers over Israel and Judah, and then there's the first king. The Israelites want a king. They want a king like all the other countries. And so God gives them a king, Saul. And Saul is kind of the transition between the judges and David. And so today we're going to be talking about David and how God has established his identity through David throughout chapter 5. And so David is the model king. At the end of 1 Samuel, Saul dies. And at the beginning of 2 Samuel, David becomes king over Judah. And David had a worker named Abner, and as she said that Abner was a worker, and then David sees Joab, likes what he does, so he asks Joab to work for him as well. And a little background information that we need to know that when you look further in the scriptures, you find out, or prior to them both, Joab and Abner working together, is that Abner kills Joab's brother in defense. It was in defense of his own life. But nonetheless, he kills Joab's brother. And so we need to know that there's kind of a beef between them. Like, they're not exactly buddy-buddy. So they're working, and then Joab goes up to Abner and says, hey, he had talked to you in private. Long story short, kills him. And so the king of Judah, Ishbosheth, gets scared. He's like, crap. My kingdom is doomed for. And so he's worried, and so the people just start booking it out of Israel. Israel. And so they're scared. Ishbosheth isn't even defending himself. Like she said, some of David's men came, killed him, and then present themselves to David like, hey, did this good thing. David is like, dude, I killed the people before that. Did you not get the hint that I'm going to kill you too? So, kills them. And then, so, we get to this point where in chapter 5, David is king over Judah, like we already established. But I'm going to read the first couple verses in chapter 5. And it says, Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, Behold, we are your bone and flesh. In times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led out and brought in Israel. And the Lord told you, You shall feed my people Israel and be prince over them. So all the elders of Israel came to king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them before the Lord, and they anointed him king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began his 40-year reign. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 30 years over all Israel and Judah. And so the elders come to him to anoint him as king. And it's important to notice that it states that the elders go to David as Israel, in where he's living. And so it's important to note that because back then, if you wanted to be king, if you wanted to be somebody, you went to the elders and kind of asked their permission, kind of showed, hey, this is who I am, this is what I have to offer, am I good enough? And they kind of give the no, go. And it's important to note that the elders came to David. And so there are 3 reasons why the elders thought that David was worthy enough to become king of Israel. And the first is that he is the bone and flesh kin of the Israelites. He's one of them. So why wouldn't they want him versus anyone else that's from a different country, or, you know what I mean? Like, they're one of him. They're one of those guys. They're one of their guys. The second is that David is known, even to the Philistines, as being the best field officer. He's one of the best men in the military. He is known for making the best decisions. He's known best for conquering land and for doing a good job at it. And then the third is that he's anointed by God. In the beginning, it says, it was you that was anointed. And it says, it was you, and the Lord told you, you shall feed my people. So that they know that God has called him into that position. He was handed, and it's interesting to know that through the circumstances, David was just a field officer in David's army. He wasn't anybody special. I mean, he was known for being a good field officer. And then Saul dies, and then he's handed the kingship over Judah. And then he's just doing what God's calling him to do. He's just trying to do his best. And he's handed that kingship. And so now later, now that Ishbosheth dies, he's handed the kingship again over Jerusalem. And so it's important to know that he's not seeking to become Mr. Popular, Mr. Cool Guy, he's not trying to be the most popular guy around. He's just doing what he's called to do. And those things are put onto him. So later when he is established as king, he goes to Jerusalem. Later on it says that he goes to Jerusalem. He notices that the Jebusites are living there, not the Israelites. And so he goes against them, fights them. But it's interesting to note that he doesn't go to the Jebusites and take over, push them out, and then take over their land. He simply pushes them out of Jerusalem, saying, hey, I'm taking back the land that is ours. And he's not trying to conquer. Again, he's not trying to be the coolest guy around. He's just doing what he needs to for his people, for his kingdom. He's being a leader. So after that, the king of Tyre blesses him, gives him the equipment, gives him everything he needs to build a palace. And so he builds himself a palace, and that establishes that physically, yes, I am now king over Israel, and I'm now king over Judah. He brings all his wives, little sister wives action, brings all his wives, and not only that, but makes more babies, which isn't right in the eyes of the Lord, but again, he does his best. And then in verse 17, after he brings his wives and all his family and makes more, verse 17 says, when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they all went up to find him, but he heard of it and went down to the stronghold. And skip down to verse 19, which says, David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand? And the Lord said to David, go up, for I will surely deliver them into your hand. And so David asks the God in everything that he does, God, what do you want me to do? What is it that you've called me to do? I know I'm king over this, I know I'm this, I know I'm this, but that doesn't matter. All that matters is I want to do your will. And so just a quick synopsis of the story is he wins the battle, and then the Philistines are kind of like, I don't think so. We actually really want this land. So he has to go up against them again. And the second time, he again goes before the Lord and says, God, what do I do? Am I going to win this again? Do I just go up to him like before? And this time it's different. This time God says, hey, wait a second. I want you to wait. I want you to listen for the sound in verse 24 it says, when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, then bestir yourselves, for then has the Lord gone out before you to smite the army of the Philistines. And so it's a little different. It's not just like, yeah, go, I'll meet you there, you'll win, it'll be great. But he says, wait a second. And it's interesting to know that The sound of them marching on the tops of the mulberry bushes is simply the breeze coming in from the ocean, rustling the bushes. And so in that way, the Philistine army will never know that the Israelites are coming. And so it's kind of like a sneak attack on the Philistines. So in the end, in a synopsis of the story, God blesses David in all that he does, and everything that he does. His identity is established. He was a field officer, becomes the king of Judah, becomes the king of Israel. It's all handed to him. He goes before God and succeeds in all. And I want to take this moment to share a quick story with you about something that was similar in my life. Looking back, I noticed kind of a similar story in my life. As you all know, I am the RA at Northwest. And a quick story of how I became an RA is kind of funny. I was good friends with my boss before she became my boss, Haley King. And we were hanging out one day towards the end of the year, last year. And it was a time of where, leadership applications are, going to be turned in and stuff. And she was like, hey, you should really think about being an RA. And I literally laughed in her face and was like, good one. Yeah, right. No, I'm good. And she was like, no, I'm serious. Like, such a great friend. She humbles herself and she's like, no, but I'm serious. Just pray about it, think about it. And I was like, okay, not really, but okay. And so later that night, I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, God, I'm going to pray to you and tell you that, yeah, I don't want to do that. So this is us just talking and me telling you, yeah, I don't want to do that. So we're cool, right? I didn't lie. I prayed about it. We're good. And then it's important to know that through the past 2 years, or the 2 previous years, so my sophomore year and junior year, I was a crew leader, life group leader, if you will, at Northwest and it was geared towards freshman girls, and so I had been able to establish relationships with them. And in that past month, when Haley had talked to me about being an RA, I had focused my whole month of meeting with them on leadership, on just focusing on where God's calling you to be, where God's maybe kind of pushing you outside your comfort zone, to step up in leadership, because I believe that we are all, no matter where we are in life, we're all in a place of leadership. No matter where we are, somebody's always looking up to us. Somebody's always watching how we interact in life with people, with circumstances. And so when I had come to that realization that I had been preaching to them about how you need to step up into what God's called you to be, and sometimes we don't realize it and we just need to listen for God's voice. And I was like, dang it. Because as a leader, I make a point to practice what I preach, and I think that's what every leader should do, is when you preach something, you got to make sure that you're following it yourself. And so when I realized I was preaching to them, telling them they need to step up, I needed to make the choice and step up myself. And to be honest, I laughed in her face because it scared the crap out of me. Being an RA over 36, I have 36 girls now, that scared me. Them watching my every move, that was very intimidating for me. So just like David, I was a leader beforehand. He was in the army. He was a leader beforehand. And so the RA thing, I didn't even think about. Somebody brought it to me. And so I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't trying to be a leader. And it was handed to me. Like David has handed the kingships, both of them. And so I want to transition this to your life. And I want you to think about a couple of different things. One, try to take a moment to think in your life and the circumstances that you're going through in life. Who are you influencing? Who are the people that look up to you? And it shouldn't be a prideful moment and thinking, who thinks I'm cool? Who thinks I'm the best person ever? No, who are you influencing? If you're a leader in our church, if you're a leader in your office, you have control over people below you, if you're a boss. Think about the people that you're influencing. And David went before God in everything that he did. Have we been doing that lately in every decision that we make? Have we been coming before God in every decision? The second thing I want you to think about is look at the circumstances in your life and look for the leadership in your life. Go before God and ask him, Lord, where is there leadership maybe that I need to stand up into? And are there areas in your life that you would never think of going to God about? Or maybe they seem intimidating or they scare the heck out of you? Where are those areas that you need to maybe step into? And I just want to challenge you guys in closing to step out to where God has called you to develop your identity. What are some areas where you need to step up and make a decision?